Hey guys, this is EJ Holland with the Wolverine.com, and we're back with another Wolverine live recruiting show here on our YouTube channel. Alongside me is my co host, Zach Libby, who is in a Channel Orange room right now. Zach, how's it going?
It's going good. Did you see that Samaj Morgan is being interviewed by the media right now?
Oh, awesome. Samaj Morgan scored a touchdown, one of our personal favorites. And next up for Michigan is Nebraska. And you guys aren't going to want to hear this, but our producer Megan is rocking her Nebraska gear in the background. She will not be showing herself, but you can boo her in the comments. Um, anyway, we're here to talk about Michigan recruiting, not the team. And our first topic of the day is, can Michigan keep Chris Ewald, top 100 cornerback out of Miami's Chaminade Madonna? He is the face of the 2025 recruiting class so far. I was out in Miami and had a chance to see Ewald in game action. And it looks like a lot of our listeners and viewers are leaving their comments in the chat box, which we definitely like to see. If you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. But Zach, you also know Chris Ewald well. So before I give my side of the story from spending time with him in Miami, how do you feel about Chris Ewald today, September 26th?
I thought about it, and I think after what you posted on the Wolverine.com today and yesterday about Chris Ewald, I think a couple of things stood out. The first was Miami was already a big threat before Zaquan Patterson, top 100 safety, committed to the Hurricanes. But now that he's locked in with the South Florida school, I think that adds another layer to what Miami is pitching to Chris. And that's, you know, a revamped program. Obviously, they're number 18 in the country right now. They have a shot at winning the ACC. Mario Cristobal has remained committed to locking down South Florida, and obviously their cutthroat NIL is one of the best in the country. I think another thing stood out was in your article. Chris mentioned that there is that dream, you're right, of him and Zaquan playing on the same team. But at the end of the day, it still was his decision. And I think that really speaks back to when he committed 9 months ago out of the blue. And that he's still trying to get Zaquan to, for them to live that dream out, maybe at Michigan. So, having Zaquan and Chris Ewald on campus together for that Ohio State game is big. But I think moving forward, the impact of having Chris Ewald in this class is more than just him being a lockdown cornerback. Obviously, that's huge. One of top 5 quarterback in the country, but there's a better chance of flipping Zaquan Patterson if Chris is locked in. There's other targets in Florida like DJ Pickett, 5-star safety that Ewald is close with, and Pickett has visited Michigan and has family from Michigan. But I think it's just as important, this argument of that Michigan is able to sign top 100 prospects on a consistent basis. I think that argument, on the other hand, would diminish, vastly if you can get a guy like Chris Ewald, if you can get a guy like Bryce Underwood. So I think that would be important for Michigan because they can say that they did it using the resources that they provide players on and certainly off the field. So yeah, I know it's going to be one to monitor, but yeah, I think keeping Chris Ewald in the class is it can be arguably number one importance outside of Bryce Underwood.
Yeah, so like Zach said, I had a couple of updates on Chris Ewald. I posted into the Blue yesterday, which is our big, recruiting scoop piece, and I had an interview with Chris, so you could get quotes directly from him aside from just my reporting. So if you're not subscribed to the Wolverine.com, you can do that today for just $1 for 1 month and read everything that we posted on Ewald. But kind of just a free summary for you guys that are joining today. Basically, Ewald is still happy with his commitment to Michigan. There isn't any indication that he's close to flipping or anything like that. But he has left the door open for other programs. You have Auburn and Tennessee really involved, but the two schools that scare me the most are Florida State and Miami. He did have a Florida State decal on his helmet, which I saw some people were a little concerned about, but Miami's probably the school that is most likely to flip him if he does. Um, Zach mentioned Miami already landed Zaquan Patterson. Now, Zaquan Patterson did tell me that he is still planning to make an official visit to Michigan, but I have no true confidence there that the Wolverines will get the flip done. So, as of right now, it looks like Patterson will stick with Miami, and that'll give the Hurricanes a big boost if he does. Ewald himself told me that Patterson being committed to Miami is going to help the Hurricanes. Um, on top of that, Ewald visited for Miami's win over Texas A&M, and that atmosphere caught his attention. And Mario Cristobal is doing everything he can to not lose key battles in his own backyard. And then lastly, you have the NIL part. Now, no recruit is going to go on record and talk about NIL, or at least what's really going on with NIL. And there has been no real indication either that, NIL is a huge factor for Ewald right now. But NIL always finds a way to creep into recruitments that involve top 100 guys, which is kind of nature of the beast of college football right now. When you look at Michigan and Miami, you have two programs on the different end of the spectrum, right? You have Miami, which is just cash flow, and you have Michigan that says, here's Empower and what we can do for you. When you're a top 100 recruit, you're more than likely going to look at the program that's, giving you the opportunity to make that NIL up front. Now, there's special cases like Jordan Marshall this cycle, and Ewald could certainly be in the same mold as Jordan Marshall, but I think the data favors the more upfront programs. So, NIL, Patterson being there, Miami being closer to home, those are all things that really favor Miami. I think Steve Klinskale is going to have to fight like hell to keep Chris Ewald in this class. He may not be close to decommitting today, but I think, as we get deeper into the process, and that's going to be something of concern. So yeah, everybody hating on me in the comments saying EJ always bringing the negative news. Look, it's not a great time for Michigan recruiting right now. But I think the Wolverines always find a way to close strong. We've seen that in previous cycles. So maybe they do that again this cycle. But as of right now, we can only report on the topics that are at hand. So last thing on Chris Ewald, and you mentioned it briefly there, Zach, at the end of your statement. I'm going to, I guess, rephrase the question from can Michigan keep Chris Ewald to how imperative is it for Michigan to keep Chris Ewald?
I think it's a very imperative. I think his impact in South Florida alone, you were at that game last Thursday. He plays at Chaminade Madonna, plays Miami Central, who's also a top-ranked team on ESPN. You have a Michigan commit representing that game. And the fact that I think he can just set an example for other kids coming up through that area, Dade or Broward, that you can find an opportunity to, headway your journey to the NFL by playing for Michigan, by leaving your area, foregoing the Power 5 schools that have consistently gone after you throughout your high school career in that state. So I think the impact will have more than just what he does on the field. I think there's so much more that he brings to the table that would give Michigan such a huge advantage in recruiting and with their current roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge to keep Chris Ewald in the class. And, Thyan, I think, is the user here, calling me out that I keep saying NIL for pay for play. Shout out to Thyan, though, with his Como de Garçons uh, fashion label there. I got my white three on tonight. But anyway, I feel like NIL is such a gray area. There isn't anything that Miami is doing to violate the rules per se because there are no real rules. So right now, anything that's pay for play is also under the umbrella of NIL. It is what it is at this point, and you can say what Michigan is doing with getting guys on the team money is real NIL, but what is real NIL? It's not clearly defined, so everything goes under that umbrella. So, if you're Miami and you're willing to spend money on recruits, all power to you. I mean, nobody's going to stop you, including the NCAA. But I think it's imperative for Michigan to keep Chris Ewald. Some of the reasons that Zach mentioned, as well as that he's just a terrific player. I mean, I do think he's a top 100 prospect. He's graded as one on the industry ranking. He's a long, fast corner. I know he's only listed at 5'11", 161, but he has the length of a 6'1", 6'2" guy. He has that South Florida speed. He's patient. He's intelligent. He plays similarly to Will Johnson in the sense that these are guys that win with their football IQ and patience. But from a pure recruiting standpoint as well, this is a guy that Michigan has already been touting as the face of the class. And if you're the face of the class and you're wavering, that's not going to, instill a lot of confidence in big time targets, including guys like DJ Pickett, who John A. Schultz mentioned that Florida's making a big run at Pickett. Ewald and Pickett are really close friends. They've talked about Michigan in the past. They're both Florida natives. Pickett has visited Michigan 3 times, and Steve Clinkscale himself has pitched Pickett on the idea of playing with Chris Ewald. And for those of you that don't know, DJ Pickett is a 5-star, the #1 safety in the country. So, I mean, if you're using Ewald as the face of the class, as a pitch to other targets like Pickett, I mean, and again, he's wavering or he flips, it's going to be, a really tough loss on the trail, both from a talent perspective and from this is a guy that can help get other elite talent to Ann Arbor. So overall, it's huge to keep Chris Ewald. Can the Wolverines do it? Yes, but I think there has to be a concrete NIL plan moving forward for recruiting. Michigan does a great job with the team and the transfer portal, but specifically for recruiting to keep guys like Chris Ewald, to make sure you can land guys like DJ Pickett and Bryce Underwood. So we'll see how it shakes out. Still a long time in the Chris Ewald recruitment. We're just getting started. We're more than a year away from Chris Ewald signing his national letter of intent. So let's move on to a more positive topic, since everybody is still upset about my negativity. So I'll just shut up and throw it to Zach for some positivity. Zach was at the big house and he had a chance to interact with some of the visitors on campus. What were some of the highlights of Michigan's second visit weekend?
Yeah, so Michigan brought in 4 offer targets in the 25 class. 2 of them were from Detroit, but the 2 main ones from out of region were linebacker Weston Port out of Southern California, top 35 linebacker by On3. His on Saturday, he took a multi-day visit, so he was there on campus on Sunday. That was his 3rd total visit to Michigan after spending time in the facilities for spring camp practice in March. He mentioned to us that stepping out of the tunnel was like being in a movie. That was his first ever game day visit. So being with 109,000 people, I'm sure that brought some emotions. He brought his family, he brought his mentor, he brought the coaches. So, it was a family affair. The recruiting staff, including Director of Recruiting Operations, Albert Karshnia, was with him. Garcino was actually the one who offered Port back in January of 2022. So Port had breakfast with the recruiting staff and some of the commits, including Jake Guanera, 2024 interior offensive line pledge. Guanera was actually one of 3 commits to be there for that game. But Port spent time with Chris Partridge, who's the lead recruiter. They first met at Old Miss actually when Partridge was on that staff. When they were together, they broke down X's and O's, broke down how Port would fit into the system. He plays both Will and Mike for his high school right now. Through 6 games, he's totaled over 40 tackles. We actually spoke to his mentor yesterday, and his mentor was saying, in terms of how Port plays, in terms of his physicality and his toughness, he compares him, Weston as a true Big Ten linebacker, someone who just get, hard nose, face in the dirt, tackling machine. But a big factor moving forward for Port, according to his mentor, is going to be education. Obviously, Michigan is one of the best public schools in the country, and Port has told us that he's going to return. It's a must for him to return. So Michigan is obviously in the top group. I think the game day visit propelled them, solidified that positioning for them. Another out-of-state target was James Flanagan out of Green Bay, Wisconsin, on 300 playmaker. He took his second visit to Michigan for the game. He made his first one for the July open period right before the barbecue. In my opinion, I think it was huge for him to go for that specific game to Michigan, considering Notre Dame was playing Ohio State that same night. If you don't know, James Flanagan is a Notre Dame legacy. His dad, Jim, played for the Irish before joining a career for the Bears. But Grant Newsome for Michigan, the tight ends coach, is making James a top priority. In terms of where Michigan probably stands, I think it's clear Michigan's in the top 5 for him. You have Notre Dame, obviously, with the legacy status. Wisconsin is making him a top priority to keep him home. He's made multiple visits to Madison. Stanford is another one in consideration, as well as Penn State. He has mentioned before about a potential spring commitment, but that could also possibly change due to how these fall visits and how these game days transpire and, how he feels in the stadium and the atmosphere. So I still think Michigan has some work to do with Notre Dame and Wisconsin especially, but considering Grant Newsome's recruiting abilities, I think Michigan is still in contention, but as of right now, I would not say Michigan is in the lead. But 2 guys who I do think Michigan is in the lead for are both from Detroit King, both edge rush targets. The first one, Willie Fletcher, 4th visit to Michigan. He also took one for the barbecue, the big man camp in June, and then junior day event in January. Now, the big man camp visit was important because we have been told, the Wolverine, that Fletcher's performance was the best out of the edge group. So that really propelled quite a bit of communication between Fletcher and pass rush specialist Dylan Roney, who works with the edges. Fletcher has told us that he's really close with Dylan. They check up on each other all the time. And I think Coach Roney kind of really shows his honesty when showing what Fletcher does right or what he does wrong. The same thing goes for Steve Clinkscale, who's the area recruiter for Detroit. Clinkscale is building relationships with both Willie and Xavier Newsome. But with Xavier, he did mention that you kind of relate to, Clinkscale kind of relates to kids like him in terms of environments or off the field. But Fletcher has also said in the past that staying close to family is important. So if Michigan does push and makes him a top priority, I do feel like Michigan can land him right now. Michigan has a commanding lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. I believe that's true. In terms of his potential fit, 6'3", 225 pounds, ton of muscle mass in the upper half, bigger framed. On film, he shows versatility as an edge rusher, 5 technique, and even goes down to a 3. So even if he ends up at Michigan, he has experience at multiple positions. With Newsome, his teammate, Xavier Newsome, he is a 4-star. I think his ceiling is very high. He's 6'5", 220 pounds. They call him Tree, and it makes sense considering that he has a slender frame. He has a lot of room to grow. I would say in excess of like 20 or more pounds. He also is being looked at as an edge target. Third visit for the Rutgers game. He also took part in the big man camp, which he got in with Dylan Roney, and then he also went for the junior day. With Roney, he said he's trying, Roney's trying to get him to campus as much as possible, and that's being much appreciated. And then with Steve Klingscale, who's also taking charge, same thing goes for Fletcher. There's a lot of relatability and backgrounds. In terms of how he is as an edge rusher, I think he's still raw. He really made his mark on the 7-on-7 circuit actually this offseason as a tight end with sound mind, sound body. So he has more experience as a pass catcher, but I think he definitely loves the development and the success that Michigan has had at edge. So in terms of how Michigan can mold guys like him, speedier, smaller frame guys like him, I think he can turn him into a prolific pass rusher. So we'll see how it goes with all four, but I think strides were made with each.
All right, let's be negative. I think this was kind of a visitors list, just like last weekend, Michigan finishing, it's 2 September weekends. Remember, the first 2 weekends were self imposed visit bans, so they didn't have visitors at all come to campus. So these last 2 weekends have been meh. I mean, there hasn't been a lot going on. And even when you talk about the targets on campus this weekend, James Flanagan, a top target at the tight end position, but is a guy that, is going to be tough to win over being a Notre Dame legacy. Then you have Xavier Newsom, Willie Fletcher, and Weston Port. Those three guys are all intriguing, but it'll be interesting to see if Michigan actually make strong pushes for all of them. I think Porta is a guy they really like. He's been on campus multiple times, but it's a really strong year at the linebacker position in 2025. So a lot of candidates to choose from. And I think they're still sorting out the pass rusher board. I think they find Willie Fletcher and Xavier Newsom intriguing, but still to be determined if they push. So overall, September was just a really disappointing visit weekend in terms of getting recruits to the big house. Now, obviously, you'll have a ton of talent on campus for the game against Ohio State, but that's pretty far away. You would have liked to see more top tier underclassmen make their way to the first two games, but it is what it is at this point. For positivity, let's go to our sponsor, Lewis Jewelers. Lewis Jewelers has been serving the Ann Arbor and Detroit regions since 1921. Lewis Jewelers' reputation and continued success stems from their belief that a successful jewelry store is built on integrity, quality customer service, and quality products. Lewis Jewelers is a proud partner of Michigan Athletics, and to ensure that every client that walks through their doors or peruses their virtual store is taken care of, they have a non commissioned trusted advisor team that's always ready to provide professional experience, advice, and expertise. No pressure, no commission. Located in the bustling cities of Ann Arbor, Michigan, Lewis Jewelers proudly serves the Ann Arbor and surrounding southeastern Michigan communities by providing an exquisite selection of fine jewelry as well as excellent customer service to its residents and visitors. Visit Lewis Jewelers at their new location, 300 South Maple Road in Ann Arbor if you're local, or visit them online at lewisjewelers.com. They do ship directly to your door. I have a package of Lewis Jewelers coming directly to my door, getting some early Christmas shopping done. If you want to surprise your wife or your significant other, let's not get into the mother daughters thing from the last ad read, but if you want to surprise anyone in your family or the special someone in your life, get them a gift from Lewis Jewelers and have them ship it over to you if you're not local, or go into the store and pick something out. Nobody would appreciate a gift more than your significant other if you get her or him some diamonds, right, Zach? I mean, diamonds are always a great gift. So go to Lewis Jewelers and get that done. Um, let's go ahead and end the show with our last topic. Zach and I were both on the road. I mentioned I was in Miami, but I actually took a flight to Philadelphia to avoid the tropical storm hitting Norfolk and had a chance to see Michigan defensive line commit Owen Wafle, while Zach stayed close to home and went out to see Brady Prieskorn, in-state tight end commit, who plays literally 5 minutes from where Zach lives. So if you want to go stalk Zach and see some Brady Prieskorn action, you can head over to Rochester Adams High School. Let's start with you, Zach. Tell us a little bit about Brady Prieskorn and your thoughts on his in-game performance.
Well, he played at West Bloomfield, so I didn't have the opportunity to walk there.
Ah, man.
I know.
Sad.
I have walked over to his high school before, I'm not going to lie. But 2 catches, 23 yards, red zone touchdown in the 36-32 loss. In terms of his physical build, I mean, I'm just impressed with his long arms. Like, he has big, solid hands. You know, he runs great with his stride. All of that used to be a prolific tight end. In terms of where he can be physically, where you can match his physical ceiling, I would say like 255, 260. I think the benchmark would be his older brother, Caden Prieskorn, who's at Ole Miss. And right now, they're both the same height. And Caden right now is 255 pounds. At the game, he lined up mostly at the X. He did not have any inline work. I think he would have had more catches had the QB for Adams had more time in the pocket. I mean, West Bloomfield's front seven is one of the best in Michigan, so probably expected. But his red zone touchdown was really good. Like, he was on an island with the cornerback. He jumped up, caught the ball. His feet came down at the 2-yard line, and he just fought into the end zone without being tackled or brought to the ground. I mean, he's just a mismatch nightmare in the red zone and on third downs. I think he can be used as a split out option for Michigan, sort of that Colston Loveland role. But he has the size, obviously, and he has the more room to grow to be put in 12 personnel packages or in line. He did tell us that he's going to early enroll in January after the game. I think working with Grant Newsome, tight ends coach, immediately is going to be great for his fast tracking to getting on the field. They have a great relationship, them two. We wrote while Brady was uncommitted that Newsome saw like 5 of his basketball games during the winter, during that January open period. So making Brady, who's top 100 in the country by the On3 industry ranking, like a top priority to keep him home. I think Newsome just did an excellent job of, building a bond. And it was really shown too on Friday because Newsome was at the game. So Newsome stopped by to watch workouts. He watched most of the game, and you can just tell how close they are. And I think that's just great. But Brady's not going to be a player, I don't think, who's going to need a red shirt. I mean, he's definitely not going to be riding the bench. I fully expect him to have a freshman campaign exactly or mirror or similar to what Colston Loveland did at his freshman year last year. I think that's how good of a player Michigan is getting for Brady Prieskorn.
All right, let's keep the comments in the chat PG, guys. But if you do love Lewis Jewelers, I mean, go ahead and order your jewelry. But anyway, I had a chance to see Owen Wafle, and just to clear it up for anybody that still thinks it's waffle, it is actually pronounced Wafle. Michigan's 3-star defensive line commit, and it doesn't seem like Wafle gets a ton of buzz, mostly because I don't think the other Michigan sites have ever seen him. And I don't think a lot of national guys really get out to the Hunt School, even though it's loaded with talent, to see Wafle. But man, this is a guy that's extremely undervalued in this recruiting class. I think Wafle has an opportunity to be the next Mason Graham. I really do. When you look at him, he's listed at 6'2", 267, which I think is inaccurate. I don't think there's any verified measurements for him coming out of camps or anything because he didn't really do camps, kind of like Mason Graham never did camps. He's right at 6'1", but he is at about 285, 290. And if you watch some of the clips that I posted on our YouTube channel earlier today, you'll see why I really like him. This kid is powerful. He has a really stocky, thick build in both his upper and lower halves. Extremely strong kid. You can tell he spends overtime in the weight room, and he's an absolute bully in the trenches while playing the nose, playing the three, playing the five. He moves around the defensive line. He had several tackles for loss. He knocked the quarterback out of the game. He's deceptively athletic as well. Starting at fullback, he cleared the way for some big runs and also caught a pass. He runs a 4.940 at 285 pounds. So he's just a really impressive looking kid. I get he's on the short side at 6'1". You know, a lot of times you say 6'1" defensive lineman, and that definitely scares you. But I think he makes up for it in a lot of different areas. And on top of that, he has longer arms. When you were talking about Mason Graham, who's about, 2 inches taller than Wafle, 2 to 2.5 inches taller than Wafle. I actually think Wafle has longer arms. So I'm not as concerned about his height because he also makes up with it, with his legs. So I really like what Wafle can bring to the table as a collegiate prospect. And I don't think he'll get a huge bump in the rankings no matter what he does because he doesn't necessarily have the NFL traits that the rankers are looking for. And it was kind of the same thing with Mason Graham. He was always knocked for not having the NFL traits. And I always came back and said, Mason Graham's going to be a stud. Mason Graham's going to be a stud. And he started as a true freshman. And I think Wafle has that type of ability. I think, yeah, maybe he's not, a first or second round NFL draft pick, but I think he comes in and if he doesn't start, contributes immediately as a true freshman at Michigan. So I really do think that Owen Wafle is that um, a guy that Michigan fans should be excited about. I mean, he was an early Notre Dame commit, essentially flipped to Michigan. I mean, a lot of big programs were interested in him up in Big Ten country, and it's not really hard to see why. The only knock on Wafle is really the height. I mean, the motor's there, the power's there, the athleticism's there, the length for being on the shorter side is there. So again, I think Wafle is one of the more undervalued prospects in this class and is a candidate to contribute early once he arrives at Michigan. Me and Zach will be back on the road this week. I will be seeing targets, no commits for me, but I believe Zach will be seeing a commit. We'll talk about that next week. In the meantime, in between time, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. And also, if you're not a subscriber to the Wolverine.com, you can subscribe today for $1 for 1 month. That gets you premium insider recruiting information, team information, basketball recruiting, NIL transfer portal, and so much more. Plus, you get to be part of a great community over on the Fort message board. Again, that's $1, which is less than a bowl of Skyline chili for 1 month at the Wolverines. Sign up today. It's a perfect time. And that's pretty much it, guys. We'll see y'all next week. Oh, actually, I'll be back tomorrow for the Q&A, so I'll answer every question tomorrow on the Wednesday night show. Zach will see you next week. I will see you tomorrow. Good night, guys.